The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back, Shifties. Dr. Andrea Coyle here, back with another episode of the Shift podcast. And I'm really excited for a very, very special guest today, Jacqueline Bulanow. I have a couple stories I want to share about Jacqueline before she's on the hot seat and I start asking her some questions. But Jacqueline and I met many years ago, and I don't even know if you remember some of these stories, Jacqueline, but I'm going to share, and I'm going to be a little vulnerable today. So she and I both were med-surg nurses many years ago. We worked on 8 East. We called it 8 East the Beast. Very difficult med-surg unit. And then Jacqueline went down to the medical intensive care unit, and shortly thereafter, I went to the medical intensive care unit. Now, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I have a girl crush on Jacqueline. I'm a stalker. That's really not how it all played out, but our story goes full circle, and it's a really good story. So we were in the medical intensive care unit, and I have 2 children. Jacqueline has 3 children, and at this time, and I don't even know if you remember this, Jacqueline, but my twin brother was diagnosed with cancer, and he subsequently passed away. And I remember I spent 3 months with my twin brother on his cancer journey. And when I returned back, Jacqueline was in the break room with me, and she, instead of saying what a lot of people say, which is, "How are you doing?" Jacqueline said, "Andrea, I'm so glad you're back." And that was super powerful to me, because that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear, "How are you doing?" because it's kind of a foolish question. So then, probably about 6 months ago, I reached out to Jacqueline and said, "Hey, Jacqueline, what's going on? Just curious, are you interested in a new role, a new opportunity?" I work for SE Healthcare, as all you shifties know. SE Healthcare is a company. It's a startup company. We're laser focused on clinician burnout. And of course, my love is with nursing. So we're focused on nurse burnout. And I said to Jacqueline, would you be interested in developing some content for our platform? A lot of it is around back to the basics. If you remember Maslow's hierarchy, we just kind of sat around and brainstormed and came up with an incredible series that Jacqueline stars in, and she knocks it out of the park. In the meantime, my mother was on hospice care with congestive heart failure. And I had went back to Pennsylvania, brought my mom back to Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I live. And I reached out to Jacqueline because I knew that Jacqueline had started her own independent company for hospice care. And Jacqueline's going to tell you a little bit about that story in a minute. Long story short, I brought my mom down on a Wednesday to my house, and she quickly decompensated in my house, but she was on hospice. And Jacqueline came over as a friend, not her hospice company, and said, "I just want to come over, Andrea, and help you out." And I think it was just meant to be that particular day, Jacqueline came to my house at 12:30, and my mother had passed away literally an hour and a half later. And Jacqueline pulled me aside. I had been up all night. She said, "Go get some rest." I went to lay on the couch in the other room. And Jacqueline said, "Andrea, I think you better come back in here. How does your mom respond? Does she want her hand held? Is she religious? Is there a preference?" And Jacqueline asked all the appropriate questions at the most appropriate time. Long story short, I was able to hold my mother's hand when she passed. And Jacqueline did such a good job, great job, not even good, of giving my mom dignity, allowing me to be, and recognizing the signs for me to be a part of that, my mother's journey. And it kind of goes back to, she said, "What's your mother's favorite perfume? Pick out her clothes. How does she wear her hair?" Like, Jacqueline just did it all. And I remember thinking this back on the 80s days, that if anything ever happens to me or anyone in my family, I would always want Jacqueline to be that nurse.
Mm.
And it's just so kind of ironic, um, serendipitous, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, that Jacqueline was there when I needed her and my mom needed her and we needed her. And it was just, it's a really good story. So I share that story because a couple reasons. Jacqueline's a great nurse, a great friend, a great human, developed this great content. And now she's on the shift. And I want Jacqueline to talk about some shifts in her career, um, some shifts in her life that I want her to share with us. So, Jacqueline, thank you for everything you've done for me. And you probably didn't even know I was going to tee you up that way. So, thank you for listening to the story. But tell our listeners a little bit about yourself so they know more about Jacqueline. And then we're going to go into, I'm going to start asking some fun questions.
Okay. Um, Andrea, thank you for that. That that fills my soul. That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm a nurse. So I appreciate that.
You bet.
Um, about me. So let's see, I graduated nursing school in 1995. 95 was a big year for me. Met my husband in college, and we just kind of looked at a map in the library and where should we go? And so we came to Charleston. So I got married, started a new job, moved to a new place, all in the same year. And that's been 29 years ago now. We've got 3 kids, had a great nursing career. Yeah, 2 kids in college, one that's still home, our surprise child. Got a dog who's keeping me in check. I heard he just went outside, so hopefully you don't hear the barking in the background. Yeah, so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you for sharing. And so, walk myself and the shifties that are listening, explain to them what keeps you coming back to this great profession and talk about the first time you had a shift and what in your life led to that shift.
Mm, wow, it's a big question. What keeps me in the profession and what keeps me coming back is really
Yes.
what you described about your mom and the opportunity to do that with so many people. For me, it's the deep connection with people. To be in a place when they're at their most vulnerable and raw and high emotion, and knowing that I can help. I might not be able to change the situation. Death is one of those natural things that happens to all of us, but can I make it better? Can I make it memorable in a good way, not not traumatic? Um, because there are highlights in our life, just like birth. Um, and then the second question you asked was about the shift, like shifts
So,
in my life,
in your career,
in
yes.
my career. So when I look back, I mean, through this work with doing the burnout prevention, which has been a gift to me in every sense of the word, um, I've had to think a lot about my career and burnout because when you reached out to me, I was getting pretty close to my rock bottom. I mean, I thought I was there, but I actually went a little bit further. And so, in working on the content for burnout prevention, I got to process my own story and look back in time to see where I had made shifts already and the shifts that I still needed to do. And for me, I look back over my career and I think about 3 main shifts, and they all had to do with different periods of burnout.
Wow. Well, tell us the first one. Because, as you know, Jacqueline, burnout is really a hot topic. Our Surgeon General has a call to action. Um, Magnet, Pathway to Excellence, PTAP, all have standards that speak to burnout. It's real. Uh, Burnout is it's real. And in the profession of healthcare, because we give so much to so many people, we're at high risk for burnout. And then we really want to keep all these great clinicians, we want to keep their experience and their knowledge so that really it serves society. So
Mhm.
talk us that first experience of burnout and then what shifted you.
Sure.
And where you shifted to?
Yeah. Um, yeah. And so this is the great thing about burnout, the lessons, like if we learn from it, it gives us wisdom. And that's what I hope I'm able to pass on in doing the burnout prevention, because it is very real for me. I'm learning as I go. The first burnout that I had was, let's see, I became a nurse in 1995. I had been in the ICU for about 10 years and I went to CRNA school. I don't know if you knew that or
I
not.
remember that.
Yeah, so I went to CRNA school. I mean, as most nurses know, it's tough to get in and it's a tough program. Um, so the program I was in was set up where you do the first half of the program in the classroom and the second half, the second year and a half in clinicals. And it was hard. I felt myself having to detach from my family to be able to laser focus. I had 3 and a 5-year-old at this point. Like, what was I thinking? I'm not sure. I had to detach my family to kind of laser focus in on what I was doing. And I did the first year fine. The classroom was fine, but I got into clinicals and I realized it was such a mismatch to who I was as a person, like what my natural gifts were. I'm very detail oriented, and that's a good thing. There's nothing speedy about me at all. And the OR is all about time. It's about accuracy and time. And me under pressure, I didn't like to feel rushed. And what I knew, what I loved about nursing, the deep connection with people, I couldn't get that in that role. So for a combination of factors, that was such a mismatch for who I was as a person. And that's when I learned about alignment. And I just wasn't aligned. It's a great job. I mean, I love the CRNAs that I was in class with, but it wasn't right for me. And so I went back to the ICU, and there was so much that was just a perfect fit for me to concentrate on 2 people, to have them for the whole shift, get deep into the details, spend time with the details, and have that deep connection with people. So alignment was the first thing I learned. And
That's a great
that was a
story.
shift. You know, and it came at a cost. It was a big cost to my ego, like having people say, you were in CRNA school and you dropped out halfway through. Like, that's a huge opportunity that you missed. Yeah, so it was a crush to the ego, and financially it came at a cost too. I mean, I had taken out student loans, like student loan debt up to my eyes, it was bad. But I got back to a place of alignment, doing what was very natural and it came very easily to me. And so I was gaining as much energy as I was giving.
The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Is burnout costing your organization its best nurses? How do you know? SE Healthcare can help. Our evidence-based approach helps nurse leaders boost retention, enhance job satisfaction, and bring joy back into our great profession. In addition, it helps elevate quality patient care. Because when the people taking care of the people are at their best, patients get the care they deserve. We can reduce burnout by an impressive 50%. Are you ready to uncover burnout's impact on your team? Visit sehealthcaresolutions.com, The Shift, for your free assessment today. That's a really good story, and it really depicts a mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of shifts. So then take us through, after the MICU, Medical Intensive Care Unit, you went on to work in a different care delivery environment. Mm-hmm. And did any of that, what were the lessons learned? What were the mind shifts? What were the shifts from that lesson?
Yeah, so I went back to the ICU. Let me think. That was 2009. Also had my 3rd child then, so it's easy to put a date on that. And I stayed until 2018. Of course, I saw a lot of changes, as anybody does, over time. And this was the second of what I call my 3 burnout stories. And so in 2018, by this time I'd seen lots of changes. Our staffing was really decreasing. Loved the job, loved the coworkers, I love the providers that we worked with. I was just really aligned with that role. But over time, they decreased the patient care technicians, like the nursing assistants, our secretarial support decreased. The charge nurse took on more responsibility in carrying the MET and the Mayday pager. The acuity system was different. What used to be a single assignment was now paired. It was just getting harder and harder. And I felt like I was giving 100%, but I would leave and felt like I hadn't done enough. And that was a terrible feeling. So it wasn't filling me the same way it had before. And the breaking point there came, I just remember this very clearly. I was in charge. I had one patient. Staffing was very tight. It had just been one of those full moon crazy days. And the code pager went off. And I responded as the charge nurse, responded to the Mayday. And it was kind of a long resuscitation, and the lady lived. And we were pushing the bed back to get her to our ICU. And I was on the phone asking the staffing office, like, I need help. I need help. Like, it's 4:00 in the afternoon. Like, I can't absorb another patient myself. And then the scary thing happened. It's embarrassing to say, but I know if people have experienced burnout, they'll understand. I was disappointed that woman lived through the code. And that was really, really scary to me. It was different than feelings I'd had before, where you, as an experienced nurse, if there's going to be a bad outcome, where this is leading. But this was much different. Like, I don't think she was going to have a good outcome. Like, I did think she passed away after a few days, but I was disappointed because she was inconveniencing us. Like, I couldn't take anymore. So it was 4:00 in the afternoon. Nobody's had lunch. We're running around like crazy. And it's like, what is the point? What's the use of this, to run around like crazy for this outcome that we know is coming? And that mindset, to think that way, was very scary for me, because previously it would have been, she's probably going to die in a few days, but this time is a gift for her family, to say goodbye, to get like mental preparation around it. And so it was at that point I knew that I had to leave. Like, I didn't have any more to give in that environment. And my second shift then was about behaviors. And I had spoken up along the way about, staffing and how difficult it was becoming. And, I don't blame it on any one person. I think our nurse managers and our leaders are in really tough spots. All the right words were being said, but the right actions weren't being taken to reverse something, this thing that was just headed for disaster, which is turned into massive burnout all over the country for people experiencing the same thing. And so that was my second lesson, was about behaviors. I learned to not focus so much on what people were saying, and mission, vision, and values, but to focus on what people were doing to back up, what they say their value was. And it just wasn't happening anymore there for me. So there were organizational behaviors I was looking at, and then behaviors for myself, like, I needed to take more responsibility for how I was treating myself and how I was allowing myself to be treated. And so I had to remove myself from the environment, an environment that I felt perfectly aligned with at one point, but I outgrew. And so I moved to outpatient.
And Jacqueline, that must have been a difficult realization for yourself. And also, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. I know that story, part of it's hard to tell, because we get into healthcare to serve people. And when we start to have these feelings that you described, number one, it's one of the three cardinal symptoms of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really it's a difficult place to be. So thank you for being vulnerable and thank you for sharing that story with all the shifties that are listening.
Mm-hmm.
And then roll into where you are now. Um, maybe something else you learned along the way about burnout and how even though burnout's not a good thing, how you were able to shift and continue to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. So, my third burnout story, in my last one, hopefully ever, because I think I've learned enough by
Fingers
now,
crossed.
was happening when you've reached out about creating content for burnout prevention. So, I was working in outpatient hospice. I hadn't been there for very long, but I had worked in hospice part time before. In the ICU, I found myself drawn to death. Um, because of that deep connection I could have with people. So when you called, I was working in hospice, but I was feeling really burnt out again. And this is where I thought I had reached rock bottom, but I had a little further to go. And this is where I learned my third lesson, and that was about clarity. Getting clarity on what it is that I love about being a nurse. Because I never thought I was going to fall victim to burnout. A lot of people use the term. I really didn't understand. I knew what it felt like, but I didn't know what was causing it. And because I didn't know what was causing it, I didn't know how to fix it. And this is, getting the clarity helped on that. Um, Going back, so I said I didn't think I'd ever fall victim to burnout because I love being a nurse. I really do. I love the essence of nursing, caring for another person. And I think that made me blind to the possibility that I could burn out because there was never a point where I didn't want to do the job. I just couldn't survive anymore in the system. So
Mhm.
clarity came for me in starting to do the burnout prevention material, learning about it, what it is, and how you prevent it or come back from it, which I'm doing. And then getting in touch, what is it about nursing specifically that I love? Like you asked me in the beginning, what's the thing that keeps me coming back? And it's that deep connection with
Mhm.
people. um, when they're at their most vulnerable and when I feel like I can be the most help. So it was getting clarity on that deep connection. And I knew I still wanted to be a nurse. But that was helpful because it transitioned me into starting my own business. I mean, you could never have told me a year ago that I would start my own business, helping people to stay in their home at the end of life. And so I take the business is private duty nursing care for clients that are on hospice with a hospice company. And then what I do, which is really interesting when I think about it now, I mean, most people, if you ask them, would say they want to die in their home.
Mhm.
That comes at a great cost to everyone around them who has to provide the care. It's difficult. And in providing this service, I provide hands on care, step in, join their team, their family, to give hands on care and prevent caregiver burnout. So I've kind of come full circle in that I'm turning my burnout story into help for myself. I get to feed my soul with what I love about nursing and then help others prevent burnout.
Jacqueline, what a great story. Congratulations, first of all, on your business. Congratulations on finding clarity and purpose because really, I'm crystal clear on my purpose. I love to make a difference. I like to touch lives. And I feel like when I get out of bed every morning, I can't wait to put my 2 feet on the ground because I'm very clear on what my purpose is. And isn't it a blessing to know what your purpose is? It
Yes.
just feels good.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you and I could just kind of brainstorm real quick
Yeah.
with our shifties and give them 3 great reasons why being a nurse is so incredible. Let's just do it together.
Okay. Um,
Um, you go first.
all right. Well, I mean, for me, it comes down to the three lessons I've learned from burnout. It's
Mhm.
aligning. If you love the essence of being a nurse, like caring for someone else, there's a place for you. There's so much variety in nursing, in terms of the job itself and location. Like nurses are needed everywhere. And so it can change over time. So what was right for me when I was younger, pre-kid or having little kids versus now is much different. But if you align with the essence of nursing, there's some place for you. And it's so different for all of us.
Ooh, I love what you just said. There's some place for you. And I think that's really important. If I could go back and speak to student nurses, which I obviously could do, it's you got to find your place in nursing. There are so many opportunities to just make a difference, whether you're a school nurse, whether you're a corporate nurse, whether you're a legal nurse consultant, um, a med-surg nurse. There's just the opportunities are endless to fill your soul. So I would agree. Um, Anything else that you could say that would really motivate people to stay in nursing and or just pursue nursing as a career?
Well, I think playing off the alignment, the next thing is, let's see, I would say to stay in it is the behavior piece. So the three lessons I learned were aligning, behavior, and clarity. And in the behavior piece is, taking care of yourself. That's going to, I mean, I'm scared for the new nurses who are leaving right away. And I want to say to them, don't give up on nursing just because you didn't have a good fit. I, in the last few years, have had many misfits, like didn't work out. If you love nursing, there is something for you. Keep looking for that fit. The second thing with behavior is treat yourself well. Like self-care is so important. I've learned so much from the burnout prevention, um, where I could have prevented some of my burnout if I had more awareness around it
Mm.
and what I could have done myself, the personal responsibility, but also what I could have expected from the system to support me in that and not work against me. So I would say don't give up. There's a fit for you. If you want to be a nurse, there's something there for you, and the system is going to change. I'm very hopeful because pain is the greatest catalyst for change. The system itself is reaching rock bottom. They're getting forced into a change now.
I love that. The other thing the third thing I want to just, and I'm just going to say and expand on what you said. If I could take myself back, I've been a nurse for 30 years. If I would have knew the signs, the symptoms, what it felt like to be burned out. And if I would have had the tools and resources that I have now, I think I probably would have saved myself a lot of pain, to take your word, because I've, like you, have experienced burnout multiple times in my career. Early in my career, I didn't even know it had a name.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like for anyone, for newer nurses or for people that are thinking about being nurses, it's really important to recognize that you're not alone, which you talk a lot about that in
Right.
your content for SC Healthcare. Um, you're not alone, and there are tools, there are resources, there are people like you and I that understand what it feels like. And just because you're feeling burned out doesn't mean you have to give up. You just have to shift. And that's why I
Right.
started this podcast. You have to shift. And
Right.
so, with that, I'm going to ask you, Jacqueline, will you please come back? We're going to interview you again. Want you to talk a little bit more about the content that you've developed because it's really powerful. And then, we'll figure out some things we can talk about, but would love to have you come back.
That would be great. Thanks for having me on. And Andrea, thanks again for the opportunity to work with burnout prevention. That it has contributed to my healing journey coming back from burnout. And it's where I'm meant to be right now. So it's perfect. Thank you.
Great. You're so welcome. And until next time, Shifties, remember your shift makes a difference. Enjoying the shift? Help us reach more nurse leaders by rating and reviewing us on your podcast app. It takes just a minute, but makes a big impact. Search for The Shift, tap those stars, and share what you love. Your feedback shapes our future episodes and helps others discover us. Remember, rate, review, and amplify The Shift today.